a particular problem directly related to continuing population growth is growing global food insecurity. For a variety of reasons, the demand for food by the consumer has begun to outturn the capacity to provide. Where all attention was previously focused on population growth as a sole source of demand on available food stocks, today an equally important source of demand has become apparent, and that is affluence. As per capita income increases, purchasing power climbs, and with it, a demand for higher quality foods, especially foods of animal origin such as meat, eggs, milk, and milk products. Eating meat can be considered an inefficient way of utilizing grain. In the United States, it takes 3 pounds of grain to produce a pound of poultry. 5:1 is the ratio for pork and 10:1 for beef. In the end, Americans eat 80% of all the grain they consume indirectly, first using it for feed and then consuming the meat. On the basis of these data, Americans consume the equivalent of 1 ton of grain a year, while inhabitants of poorer countries consume 1/5 as much. Outside our borders, other nations with growing economies but without comparable agriculture have also increased their appetite for animal protein. Hence, 60% of North American agricultural sales has been to nations whose people are already rather well fed. At this time, the approximately 1 billion people of the developed world feed enough grain to their livestock and poultry to provide minimal nutritional requirements to another 2 billion people. Over the last 20 years, the rich minority of the world has doubled its meat consumption. This is, however, not due to eating twice as much meat per capita, although there has been some rise here. Rather, there are twice as many people with the money to buy a higher quality protein-rich diet. The net result is that while world population has been growing at 1.6% and agricultural production at 2.5%, world demand for food has been increasing at 3% per year. It is to our advantage and the world's as well that the United States grain harvests in recent years have resulted in enormous yields. Overflowing granaries and low grain prices are the mark of this high productivity. But the great increases in food production have not occurred where populations are growing the fastest. Gains in production require modern energy-intensive methods, combining irrigation, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, genetics, and mechanization. One reason, among several, why poor countries have lagged behind in food production is because their farmers have not had access to appropriate technologies, such as sufficient fertilizers, irrigation, improved seeds, pesticides, storage facilities, and transportation. The world's poor are thus driven to world food markets to supplement their needs. However, they must compete there with richer nations whose own increased demands have forced the price of grain upward. With food prices rising beyond their purchasing power, the poor country can buy less and less with their precious dollars. According to some estimates, world agriculture could produce enough to feed up to 30 billion people. What appears to be a food shortage may, in fact, be an uneven worldwide distribution of economic power. We have the producer nations with surpluses to sell, the affluent consumer nations who have money to buy, and the low-income consumer countries that cannot effectively compete in the world food market. These differentials represent an ever-growing number of hungry people. Thus, there is famine in some parts of the world. most notably on the Indian subcontinent and some countries with Africa and Latin America, and an overabundance of food in a number of others.